Okay, so it's 9 a.m., so we can start, I think, at 12 p.m. at Eastern Time. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our third webinar of this year. And first of all, we as Essential Software Solutions would like to thank all our attendees for joining this webinar. Before I start to my introduction, I want to mention that this webinar is being recorded for educational and marketing purposes. Also, you will receive a copy of the recording in the following days. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Kaan Aytakoglu, and I will be hosting this webinar. Me and my colleague Anna Chikarelli is running the marketing activities for ESS for 1.5 years. As we celebrate our 50th year in 2024, one of our core commitments to delivering best and most honest ERP evaluation has been steadfast. And as an Infor Gold channel partner, we always proud to accompany your ERP journey in every stage. And I repeat this every webinar, but one more time, I want to thank all our dedicated workers, business partners, and clients make us premier ERP implementation partner of Infor in Western Canada and Western US. So today we have a very special speakers from Avalara, Thomas Price and Jesse Luther. Welcome back again.
Thanks for having me.
Thomas, he has been with Avalara since November 2021, and prior to joining Avalara, he spent the previous 7 years with Infor, supporting the manufacturing and distribution teams in a variety of sales roles. And right now, he's residing in Greenville, South Carolina. And Jesse Luther, Jesse is strategic alliance manager at Avalara, and he spent his 6 years with Infor for strategic partnerships. And when we look at his past, we will see a successful career history in variety industries since 15 years. I think we are ready, but before we begin, let me remind you quickly the interface of Zoho webinar. If you have any questions, you can simply type them in the Q&A section. I will not interrupt our speakers during the presentation, but I'll address all your questions at the end. And also, if you have any questions after the webinar, please don't hesitate to contact with us or Thomas or Jesse. We would be glad to help. Okay, so Jesse, if you're okay, or Thomas.
All right, I'll grab the screen and let me know when you can see my presentation. Jesse, can you see Avalara?
Yeah, looks good.
Perfect. So first off, thanks again to Essential Software Solutions for having us, giving us an opportunity to speak not only to you, but to your client base, and to talk about this topic of sales tax compliance. And today we're going to talk about really why sales tax compliance matters to every business. So a quick agenda of what we're going to cover today. First off, obviously, why sales tax matters. We certainly understand that a lot of the businesses we're speaking to today are based in the country of Canada. And so some of you may have some understanding of US tax law, some may not. And so we're going to give you some things to understand about why sales tax may matter to you and your business. And so one of the key components of that is really the concept of nexus. What is nexus and does your company have it? We'll cover that at a high level. And then we'll get into the 5 steps of managing sales tax compliance. As you determine nexus, as your nexus expands, your responsibilities with sales tax compliance expand with it. So we'll talk through some of the things you need to be aware of to manage that process effectively. And then we'll tell you how Avalara can help you with that compliance process. So first off, the first question, why should sales tax matter to you? So first off, in the United States, 45 of the 50 states rely on sales tax to fund their operations. In fact, almost 24% of state and local tax revenue comes from sales tax collections, just behind property tax. And so each state governs its own sales tax laws. And so one of the unique things about U.S. sales tax, the seller um, really is the indirect collector and reporter of that sales tax. We call it a pass-through tax. And so why does it matter potentially to you? Who are these companies that are indirectly collecting and reporting this sales tax? It's all those companies that have Nexus. So what is Nexus? Nexus is really just a connection between a taxing jurisdiction and an entity, say a business. Until this connection is established, the taxing jurisdiction really can't require you to begin collecting tax. So then the question becomes, do you have Nexus? There's a variety of ways that you can trigger Nexus in the United States. Again, taking into account the fact that a lot of the businesses we're speaking to today are based in Canada. Probably one of the most important ones to consider is the concept of economic nexus. Back in 2018, there was a US Supreme Court decision, the state of South Dakota v. Wayfair. And basically what happened with that Supreme Court ruling was South Dakota said, hey, Wayfair as a company is shipping all these goods into our state, and we're not seeing any of that tax revenue. So even though they don't have any sort of physical presence or brick and mortar, we want our piece of that sales tax that's been lost. And so thus came the economic nexus laws. As of today, all 45 states that charge sales tax have enacted economic nexus laws. Some of the things to consider is that even exempt sales can count towards these exempt or economic nexus laws. So these are some of the important things to be aware of as a business based in Canada. Do you sell into the United States? Do you ship into the United States? Those types of business activities may be causing an economic nexus concern for your business. So something to be aware of. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't also look at some of the physical nexus triggering activities. If you have some understanding of US tax law, you're probably aware that if you have a brick and mortar location, you need to be reporting your sales tax in that state. But there's some other ways that you can also trigger physical nexus, which even supersedes the economic nexus activities. Do you have any employees that are operating in the United States? Did you have any employees attend a trade show in the United States? Even a tricky one, do you use fulfillment by Amazon? Amazon will actually store your inventory in one of 16 distribution centers across the country, and that can be a nexus triggering activity. So some things to be aware of. And so really, what are we trying to avoid? We're trying to avoid a negative audit experience. Some of the general questions that you need to be asking yourself in the event of an audit for those companies that are registered in some US states and have an understanding of US sales tax law. First off, did you collect and remit the correct amount? How are you managing the jurisdiction by jurisdiction rates, and are you over or undercharging your customers? For any companies that aren't registered anywhere in the United States, should you have been? Should you have been collecting and reporting your sales tax? And then a lot of you are probably wondering too, well, all of our customers are exempt from us charging them sales tax because they're either resellers, dealers, manufacturers, a variety of reasons. And so in the event of an audit, the first thing an auditor is going to look at, if that is the case, if that's the type of business model you have, is do you have the proper documentation on file to prove why you didn't collect tax from your customers? This can be a very important detail to overlook. And so again, the things that we're trying to avoid in a sales tax audit is having to pay back taxes we weren't aware that we owed, and also interest and penalties if it's been a while since we established Nexus originally. If you're wondering how you might be found, if you might be pegged for a state sales tax audit, there's a lot of ways, but one of the most common ones is your customer may be in a state sales tax audit. You may have invoiced them for a product and there was zero tax on that invoice. An auditor will see that and ask, why didn't they charge sales tax? Are they doing more business in our state with other companies? Let's go check it out and make sure everything checks out. Some other ways that you may be triggered for a state sales tax audit in the US, a vendor may have been audited as well. The size or sales volume of your company. It could be a simple Google search on your website. If you have information that shows that you ship into the United States and that auditor can't find any registration of your company, there's a red flag for them as well. Even for those companies that are listening that are registered in a lot of the states in the United States. If you have a high volume of exempt sales, that can be a red flag as well. Again, they're going to be wondering, do you have all your documentation in place? Because potentially you could be liable for the entire sales tax amount for a transaction if you can't present valid, accurate documentation for that sale. So, with all that in mind, what are the 5 steps that we need to be aware of to manage sales tax compliance effectively? So first, we need to understand our nexus. Where should we be collecting and remitting sales tax? From there, we need to go about getting registered in those states and then beginning the process of collecting and remitting sales tax. Step 3, we need to be sure that we're calculating and collecting the correct sales tax amount. And for those transactions in which we don't charge sales tax, we need to be sure we're tracking and managing those exemption certificates. And then finally, for this tax that we do collect, we need to remit that sales tax to the appropriate taxing authorities. And there's even going to be some situations where we didn't collect sales tax and we still need to report our sales with a $0 sales tax associated with it. So if we dig a little bit more into each of these steps, the first step, knowing where your business must collect and remit, you've got to do a review of your business activity. Like we covered earlier, economic nexus is one of the things you probably need to look at. But also, again, do you have employees that are operating in places outside of Canada, inside the States? Are you attending trade shows? Um, are you utilizing something like a fulfillment by Amazon? You need to do a deep review of those types of activities to determine whether or not you should be registered in any US states. Another example would be, are you establishing any new sales channels? Have you considered e-commerce? E-commerce can open you up to anywhere. And with e-commerce, depending on your Nexus profile, and when you establish Nexus becomes a very important aspect of this. When you open up to e-commerce, in some cases, that first transaction that occurs via e-commerce may be a taxable sale, and you need to be aware of that. Step 2, the process of registering and collecting sales tax. Once you establish Nexus, you need to get registered in the state, and every state and even some local jurisdictions within those states are going to have their own unique requirements. Just some of the typical items that you need to be prepared to share with the states. What type of business do you operate? Your legal business name, the date your business was formed. Another question they'll probably ask you is, when did you start doing business in our state? You'll see below they're going to ask for the name and contact information of all managing members, officers, partners. And the reason they're asking for that is, in the event that you provide any inaccurate or untruthful information, those could potentially be the people that are liable when you do get registered in a state. Step 3, we've got to calculate the correct sales tax amount. There are over 13,000 tax jurisdictions in the United States today, and there's over 1,800 different rules around product taxability, um, business taxability, and each jurisdiction is going to have its own different tax rates and unique tax rules. Just this example on the screen, these two establishments right next door to each other in the state of Colorado have vastly different tax amounts. This $2,400 computer, there's a $100 tax difference, and these businesses are right next to each other. So if we're talking about a manufacturer that sells large equipment that exceeds $100,000, you can imagine the tax implication if you get this wrong. And again, back to the exempt sales as well, if you don't have the proper exempt documentation, you're potentially liable for the entire unpaid amount of tax, which that leads us to step 4, tracking and managing those exempt sales. Businesses can be exempt for a variety of reasons. Resellers, obviously, manufacturers, but even that may be only at a reduced rate. But even government entities, nonprofits, religious organizations, all these entities are going to have a documentation requirement that the seller is responsible for collecting. And so that documentation needs to be maintained. Some states have expiring exemption certificates. A best practice is to collect a new certificate every 3 years. So do you have a process in place to do that effectively? Are you doing it to begin with? And then finally, step 5. You're going to have the responsibility of reporting and remitting any sales tax to those tax authorities. Once you collect that sales tax, you've got to get it to the jurisdiction. So what's the process of filling out those returns, reporting an accurate amount, getting those funds to the states? Some of the nuances on a state-by-state basis. Some allow you to do online sales tax remittance. Some still require paper remittance. Um, there's going to be varying remittance due dates or filing schedules. You may have some that are monthly, some that are quarterly, some are annual. How are you going to track that process? Some states and jurisdictions require prepayments. You're going to get tax notices. You'll get questions from the jurisdictions in which you file on maybe there was a miscalculation or they want some additional feedback on a return you filed. And even some states have local jurisdictions. It may not just be a state level return that you need to file. You may need to file at local city localities. Louisiana, for example, has parishes. You may need to file in all those parishes as well. So how can Avalara help you with this sales tax effort? If we look back at each of those 5 steps, we'll start again with knowing where you should be collecting, reporting, and remitting sales tax. We have a couple of options that we can support you with. The first being a nexus study. Another way we describe it is a sales tax risk assessment. We have a team that's comprised of CPAs, former state auditors, and they can work with you and your business to help you determine not only where you've established nexus, but when you establish nexus and any potential financial risk associated with past noncompliance associated with that nexus. You'll get a detailed report that includes some recommendations on how to best address this past noncompliance. Alternatively, we do have our Avalara tax research solution. If this is something that you want to take on yourself, tax research, the way I like to describe it, think of it as a digital CPA. It's every state Department of Revenue website distilled down into an easily searchable platform that provides clear yes/no answers to any and all sales and use tax questions you might have. It also includes a lot of information on VAT and GST. If you do any drop shipping, it includes feedback and logic on how to address certain situations, who's responsible for collecting the certificate or collecting tax. It's a great tool for any finance and accounting department to have if you're doing any sort of business in the US. Step 2 with the registration. When you need to get registered for sales tax, we have a dedicated Avalara licensing division that can help streamline and automate that registration process. In addition, they can also provide general license guidance and preparation. Say you do establish a brick and mortar in the United States, you're going to have to get some business licenses associated with that location. We can provide guidance there. And we even have a license management software solution that helps streamline the management of your licenses. You can set up workflows and alerts as licenses expire and you need to renew them. And there's even a research component to that software solution, where you can research a specific location based on your business type, and it will tell you what types of licensing you need to be considering for your business. Step 3, calculating the correct sales tax. You can leverage our Avalara AvaTax solution. There's actually a pre-built integration to every go forward Infor ERP so that at the point in the transaction when a tax determination is needed, AvaTax can provide an accurate and real-time tax determination in your order or invoicing process. So you don't need to update and maintain tax rate tables, individual product taxability. We can handle all that for you through that pre-built integration to your ERP. But then there's going to be those exempt sales as well, and we can support you with our exemption certificate management solution. With our ECM solution, we have all the state-by-state logic built in, all of the exemption certificates you need to collect from your customers. We can provide a guided experience where instead of having to rely on your customers to determine the validity of the certificates you're responsible for, we can push the correct form to them to fill out in a customer-facing guided experience that eliminates errors and ensures that you collect the correct documentation from your customers. There's even logic built in so you can automatically reach out to your customers for state exemption certificates that expire on a 1 or 3 year basis. And you'll have clear visibility into the current health of your entire exemption certificate process. And then finally, with remittance, with our Avalara managed returns filing service, we can actually help with the sales tax return preparation process. We can file those returns on your behalf, remit the payment to the appropriate jurisdictions, and we'll even handle the tax notices on your behalf as well. You can simply submit those to us and we'll answer to the state for you on your behalf. Each of these solutions start to comprise our Avalara Compliance Cloud. which is comprised of 6 distinct product clouds. You'll see there's a chronology to it, starting with business licensing and business inception, all the way through to when you grow internationally. We can provide some fiscal representation, and we're continuing to expand the ever increasing e-invoicing requirements. But really what we set out to do was be sure that we provide support across the spectrum of compliance. Again, from business licensing to sales tax calculation to document management to international expansion. So with that, this is how Avalara can help you. If you want to learn more, we would love to have a conversation, help you get a better understanding of your current compliance profile. Do you have any concerns? Is there an opportunity for us to partner and help you improve your sales tax compliance process? Again, we can help you with just a simple conversation. So we appreciate your time. That was my presentation for the day. We certainly want to open it up for any questions. Jesse or Khan, did we have anything come in from the audience?
Not right now, but so we can wait. So if you have, I actually wrote to the Q&A section. If you have any question, please, you can use the field Q&A to deliver your questions. We will be glad to answer. But let me open the other side.
All right, there's one. When shipping from Canada into the US, does it matter if the customer pays for the shipping? We ship on their account. Or if the customer arranges the shipping, they arrange a pickup at our location in Canada. So that's a good question. It does depend. If ownership changes hands at the loading dock, in that case, the sale did occur at that point. So it really depends. And one thing I should say, I am not a CPA, so I can't give tax advice. I would still advise you to look deeper into that question. Again, our tax research tool is a great resource to use. But if that's a question that you want to dig into more, again, we're certainly happy to connect, point you in the right direction to look deeper into that. Other questions?
We have a question. I use Amazon for fulfillment, Amazon FBA, but I'm only registered in 2 states, no shopping cart. Is there anything I should know about the program?
Yes. So like I mentioned, with Amazon FBA, they could potentially store your inventory in one of 16 distribution centers across the country, and that can be a nexus triggering activity in those states. I would connect with a contact from Amazon. They can provide you a report which details where your inventory is currently stored, and from that, you can make a sound business decision based on that report. So certainly follow up on that and connect with Amazon.
Okay, and we have one more question. Thomas, can you explain more about exempt sales?
More about exempt sales. Any more detail or anything more specific? At a high level, exempt sales, I guess if we're speaking just if we're talking about just a business in the United States, an exempt sale, again, can depend on the product or the customer. In most cases, it's going to be based on the customer and who you're selling to and why. Resellers are the biggest reason. You don't charge tax on a sale to a reseller. Basically, in the United States, the end user is the one that's responsible for paying that tax on that transaction. So an exempt sale could be because the customer is a reseller, or again, a religious organization or a government entity. But in some cases as well, the product could be exempt. Again, depending on the jurisdiction, the state, some states may say this individual product is not taxable. New York, for example, clothing to a certain level, depending on how much is purchased on the invoice, some amount is taxable, some is not. those are some of those tricky rules that are on an entity or sorry, on a jurisdictional or state by state basis that is just very difficult to manage. Again, part of the reason that we're here to help with situations like that.
Okay, we have one more question from Rob Gale. How does attendance at a single trade show trigger Nexus?
Again, this is just one of those nuances on a state-by-state basis. Some states say that even attending one trade show is a display of eliciting business inside that state. And so doing so is a nexus triggering activity. Now, from that point, it's kind of up to you and your business to either assume that risk or come forward and be honest. Again, that's up to you. These are all compliance risk questions for you to determine as a business. But yes, there's certainly just attending a trade show can be a nexus triggering activity. Anything else?
Yeah, we have another question from private chat. How does Evalora ensure data security and compliance with regulations such as GDPR?
That is a great question. That might be one we need to table and Con. I can dig up what information we have. I do know that we certainly take all that into account. We have SOC 2 certification, everything along those lines. And I think we do have a dedicated site that details not only all our security standards, but also all the privacy standards that we take into account. So Con, let's certainly follow up on that and I can share the information we have on security and data privacy.
Okay. Thank you. And so one more question. We are a Canadian-based business that has been doing business in the US for years. We have never been audited. I hope I pronounced correctly. What are our concerns?
So again, back to some of those topics we discussed, it's almost not a matter of if, but a matter of when. If you're doing business in the United States, again, that invoice example is a great one. If a company that you sell to is audited, you can pop up, show up to that state auditor just having an invoice with no tax, and that makes you susceptible to a potential audit. Even if you've never been audited, my suggestion would be is at least have an understanding of your nexus based on nexus laws, just to be prepared in the event that that type of event happens.
Okay. Okay, we have another question. Does Evalera offer for tracking tax compliance and financial analysis? And so what reporting capabilities Evalera has?
So as part of that integration to AvaTax, and then AvaTax itself has all sorts of financial and sales tax reporting. If you need to run any sort of tax liability reports, jurisdictional detailed reports, even economic nexus reports, AvaTax has thorough reporting around sales use tax reporting. So certainly plenty of capabilities there.
And another question is, what would you recommend if my company exceeds most of the state's economic nexus thresholds but has not registered anywhere yet, just registered in their home state? Do they need to worry about historical liability?
Certainly so. The recommendation in that situation would probably be the nexus study. To work with one of our CPAs, one of our former state auditors that is aware of what you need to be aware of, and to share that with you. In some cases, we may determine that a thorough nexus analysis is not necessary, but we can still get recommendations with just an initial free scoping call to let you know, here's some of the things you need to do. It may just be collecting exemption certificates and being prepared in the event that you are audited. You may want to go the full compliant route, get registered and begin reporting in those states. Again, these are business decisions for you to make, but in that type of situation, if you feel like you've exceeded the thresholds for all states, I would certainly start with a nexus study to understand what risks are associated with your unaddressed Nexus profile.
Okay, so we still have time, so please, if you have any question, you can write to the Q&A section. But I'm getting another anonymous question. How frequently does Avalara update its tax rate and rule database?
So we have a team that is constantly monitoring and updating the AvaTax cloud service. So as those individual product rule changes, as there are tax rate changes with jurisdictions, those are updated in real time. So you can be confident that whether it's a new month, if there's a new rule, that first transaction that happens in that new during that new month or period, it's going to be up to date and it's going to be charged accurately. So again, we have a team that's dedicated to maintaining that cloud service with up-to-date information.
Okay, there's another question. Let me open it. When you hit an economic threshold, are you automatically registered in the state?
So if the question is around just if you do sales, if you're leveraging AvaTax, I guess I'll answer it that way. If you're leveraging AvaTax and we notify you that you've exceeded an economic nexus threshold, absolutely not. We will not do anything automatically in that regard with registering you with the state. That is, again, your business decision to make. Again, we will give you all the notification, all the information that you need to make that sound business decision. But as far as utilizing our Avalara licensing service to get registered, we will only register you in a new state when you tell us to.
Okay, thank you so much, Thomas, for this answer. So I'm not sure, is there any other question? So please don't hesitate to ask. Okay, I think we don't have any other question, Thomas. Yeah.
Okay.
But like I said at the beginning of the presentation, if you have any other question, I mean, if any question just comes to your mind, please don't hesitate to ask to ESS or Thomas or Jesse. We're gonna share the email addresses with you so you can ask your questions. Okay, so if we don't have any other question, or if you don't have any other thing, I think we can close the session.
Okay. Con, thank you and ESS again for having us. And just to reiterate, we know that every business is different, operates differently. And so these questions, it's great to just dig in, understand more about your business and address some of these concerns you may have. So again, we're happy to have a 15-20-minute conversation, review your company, your business operations, some of your sales tax compliance standards currently. So we'd be happy to connect. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
And thank you too. And we appreciated all the presentation, and it's our pleasure to have you here. Okay, thank you so much. And in shortly, we will send you a copy of the webinar recording. So please follow your emails. Thank you so much and have a great day.